Hi, this is Kieran Hovasapian for Filmstorm Studios, and we're going to have a look at creating an enemy AI for our third-person character tutorial. So where we left off, if I press play, you'll see that we've got our character, and we've also got our sword system set up, and you can do this. But you notice how we set up, you can look forward, and it's actually raycasting where you're looking at. I've had a lot of requests to actually turn that feature off. So you can just come down to that rotate to look up and down FSM that we created, and you can just turn that off. And then that way, whenever you actually look somewhere, it should begin running in that direction. So what we actually want to do in this tutorial is set up a raycast system for our enemy to actually, when it sees us, to run towards us and start attacking us. So that's what we're going to be doing in this tutorial. So let's just jump out of here. Let's just make sure that's all still turned off. And if you actually notice, if you minimize one of them and then you press play, it actually minimizes all of them. So that's just something to keep in mind. Alright, so let's begin setting up our enemy. So this is our robot that I downloaded from the Unity asset store. It's a free robot. And we've set up the health text and everything, and the little hitboxes that you can see. We've got the hitbox at the front, and we've also got the back hitbox as well. And that's pretty much all been set up for damage as well. I probably should show you that as well. So when we jump in here and we equip the weapon, let's run forward and let's attack him at the front. And that actually probably swung and hit him at the back as well. So the back's an instant kill. So let's just try this from the front. Let's just try it maybe from about here. Oh, a little bit closer. So you probably want to actually move the front and back hitboxes a little bit to make it a little bit more fair. So there you go. So we probably have to activate a ragdoll there. Alright, so let's get started on developing this AI. So if you jump into him, we've got his health set up already, so that's all good. We can leave that as it is, but we want to start working on his movement. And we've actually just got a find player state on the start, which is basically just saying find the game object that has the tag player and store that as a game object. So we're going to say where's the player, we're going to store that in our system. And you can actually set that up and make sure it's set up in your tags up here. So I've set our tag as the player, and if you don't see that, then you can just make a new tag and call it player or whatever you want the enemy to find. So now let's just jump back up here, and we're actually going to say we found him. Now we're going to be testing the raycast. And what does that mean? Well, in front of our enemy we actually have this little raycast thing here, and it's just an empty game object, and I'm saying it's called raycast look for player. And basically this one, if we jump into it, so this is what this is. So this is essentially doing the same thing. So it's finding the player, and then it's just going to continue looking at the player, and we're going to say keep vertical, so that way sometimes it breaks and doesn't really work that well if you have vertical turned off, but you can actually, we can fix that later, but let's just keep that ticked for the time being. It will make your life easier. So that's basically how you set up this little raycast, and make sure it's in front of the character. Perfect. Now let's actually just turn these two to ignore raycast, as when we start shooting raycasts through here, it's actually going to get caught up in our hitboxes, and we don't want that. So let's jump back to the enemy, go to movement, and we're actually going to set up a raycast. So let's say raycast, and And what we're actually looking for here is not this raycast, we actually want a different raycast. So what you need to do is, let's just come up to Playmaker, Add-ons, Ecosystem, and the Ecosystem browser. Now if you don't see this, you're going to have to go to the Playmaker, the Hutong website, and I'll put a link in the description, and what you need to do is just look up the ecosystem, download it, and then just pretty much import it, and then you'll have this little ecosystem up here. And this is really nice to look for specific things, and what we're looking for is Raycast. So once that does a quick search, we want pretty much a thing called Raycast 2. So this is the one we want. So let's just say get. It's just going to quickly download, and then that's going to pretty much import and update our scene. So you can see we're updating. Perfect. Lovely. So let's bring this guy back up. Let's jump in here, and now you'll actually see, we'll go edit. Now you'll see when we go Raycast, we have another little Raycast 2. And the only difference between this is you have a no hit event and you have a hit event, and it's better just to kind of use the one Raycast, and I really prefer the second Raycast. So we're actually going to be Raycasting from the point that we set up. So let's jump in here. We'll say from game object, the Raycast look for player. Let's make him look about 100 meters, that's fine. And what we're going to do now is we're going to say if there's a hit, we're going to make a new event. So let's make a new event. We're going to say found player. We actually have that already, but that should be fine. Let's just use this one, and we're going to call this move to player, and we're going to make this red because this is an important move that's happening here. And let's also make it a circuit, so that way we know that this is really a big thing for the state that's happening. So make it really stand out. You can even say let's begin transitioning to the player. I know that's not how you spell transitioning, but transitioning, that sounds legit. All right, and this is a good little way. So when you come back, I mean, sometimes I like, I'll remember what I've typed, and then you go back after you have like a ridiculous loop, and you're like, I have no idea what each of these nodes are. So if you just make a little note to yourself, it saves you heaps of time. Coffee. Now let's have a look at what we need to do now. So we've set up this event. Let's make it, once we hit the player, we're going to say found player, and then we'll move down there. Alrighty, so I figured it out. I had to pause the video and had a bit of tinkering, but what actually was happening was, if I go to here, this look at, you can't actually use this because this actually interferes with the Raycast, because this is technically doing its own Raycast. So all I did, so you can pretty much come in and completely destroy that, delete that, turn off this transition. So basically as soon as it finds this player, you can just make it sit there and say looking at player. And then under your enemy, all I've done, so we needed to create an endpoint for our player, and I'll show you why. If I turn off this endpoint that I made, and you come and press play, you'll see that the Raycast, it's not gonna find it. Let me just we have to turn this Raycast off as well. If I turn this endpoint off, you'll see that when it Raycasts, oh damn it, I'll have to put the player on what it originally was. So when we were saying look at the player, this is actually what's happening. It's looking right at the base of the player, so it can't actually detect where you are, because it's not really hitting anything unless you get really close, which isn't going to work. So what I ended up doing was coming to the hips of the player, creating an empty game object, and just calling it endpoint. And this is where the Raycast will be coming and hitting our player right in the middle. And this is how you can get around that problem. And I just created a tag saying endpoint, a new tag. And all I did was come to the enemy. In the very first one, we've made a new find game object with the endpoint. So we're storing that as a game object, the endpoint. Coming to Raycast, and we're actually going to say the end object, instead of being the player, is the endpoint. So that way, no matter where you go up and down, the endpoint will be detected. And we made it 100. And instead of using a hit event, because as soon as it hits an object, it will go to the next one, we're actually going to say store hit object, test for Raycast, and that's actually going to say, hey, what are you hitting? And underneath that, we're going to say, we're going to compare the game object tag that it's getting hit with. So we're saying testing the raycast of what we're hitting, and if that's true to being a player, we're going to say found, and that's when we can start moving towards the player. So let's give this one a go, and theoretically it should all work. So you can see now that the raycast is moving, it's actually following us, and now you'll see that this guy is actually turning and looking at us, which is kind of creepy. So that is step one of our thing, and it's probably one of the largest steps to get our heads around. And we can also pretty much use the same system to say, hey, if you can't see us, then stop looking at us, pretty much. But let's just set up a simple animation system for the characters to run after us. So let's come into our movement, and now that we can say, hey, we can actually finally move to the player, let's keep that, and we're actually going to say set animator float, and we're going to set, let's jump into our animator and check what we've got. Let's set input Z to a value of 1, and basically this is going to make him run forward when he sees us. So let's make this, hey, so now he's going to run towards us. And now we'll basically have to make a new system to say, when he's at a certain distance from us, stop and maybe engage with a new animation. So this is when we can get really artistic with our designs. So let's come into our move to player, and we're actually going to say get distance, and this distance will be from to the player. We can actually say to endpoint, because that's where we would be easier to scan, and we're going to store the result in distance to player, which is just a float. And let's compare the float, and we're going to say if the distance to player is let's say 5, and if it's less than 5, we're going to say, we're going to create a new event actually, and we're going to say stop and maybe pull out sword, and add transition, and let's create a new state, and we're just going to call this engage, or actually pull out sword. So that's when we can start doing it. It's better if you name all your different things with what you're actually going to get your characters to do. So we're actually going to say if it is less than or equal to 5 units, we're going to say stop and pull out sword for every frame. Don't use greater than, because if he is further away than 5, he's instantly going to pull out his sword. So technically, if we press play now, you'll see that he'll run towards us when he hits 5 units. He already hit 5 units, so he's going to keep running until we tell him what to do. Maybe 5 might be a little bit too extreme. Let's make it 2. And let's actually start to set up this animation. So let's say set animator. So we're going to have to make him stop. So let's say input Z is 0. So that will make him stop running, because basically what we're doing is we're actually driving our animator blend shapes, our blend tree. So if you press play, you'll see that he's at like kind of 1. If he's at 0, he's not doing anything. If he's negative 1, he's going to move to the left, 1 right, and then -1 back. And this is fairly simple, and you can see how we set this up in a previous tutorial. Alright, so let's jump back here, and now if you notice when we press play, when we get in line, let's have a look at what he's done. So he's already in pull out sword. Maybe distance to player is less than 2. Let's have a look at what's happening here. So that is that. If it is equal to 2, let's have a look. So let's have a look. He's coming in. So 2 might be a little bit too much. Let's make that like 4. And if it is greater than 4, or if it's less, surely it should be less than. So stop and pull that. No. All right, let's make that like 0.5. Surely that can't be right. Maybe it is greater than. I don't understand how that could be. Stop, pull out. Let's have a look. Well, let's actually see what the distance is. Where is this distance to player? What's it saying? Well, distance to player is 18. Get distance, store, result. If the distance to player is surely less than 18, maybe what we actually need to do is, because the calculation is happening right there and then, so it might be saying, oh, it's 0. So what we need to do is actually copy this in before here, and that way we can start to get the information before we do any calculations. There we go. So that's working. That's what we wanted. So that's what the problem was, is that this is being set at 0 before we can even do the calculation. So let's make this about 8. So let's make him stop at 8. Now, when he stops, we're going to stop him, and we're actually going to look up an animation. And let's have a look. What do we got? We got block, idle, jump, combo, react, walk, equip. So yeah, let's just let's use this one. Let's jump in here. Let's jump back to our base layer, and we're going to say equip, and we're actually going to make a new transition, and this transition will be a bool. We're going to say to equip, and if this is correct, we're going to say to equip is true, and once that's finished, we're going to come back and blend back to our position. And this one does not have an exit time because we want it to start straight away. So that's perfect, and then that one can go back as it is. So what we're going to do now is come back to our scene, come into our enemy, come to movement, and we're actually going to say, for the pull out sword, we're going to say set animator bool, and animator bool to, did I put capitals? You need to make sure you spell it exactly. So lowercase t, uppercase, and we're going to say set that to true, and let's make that a wait time, because we're going to wait for him to do it for 0.5, finished, and as soon as that happens, we're going to start our next state, which will be begin attack phase. And in that attack phase is when we can set up more animations. We'll probably do that in the next tutorial. Alright, so we've got this equip, and we need to now say copy and turn that off in the next one, so he won't keep doing it. And that should be good. So let's jump in and press play. Alright, so he's going to run towards us. He'll stop, pull out his sword, and then we need to probably then blend him into the attack stage. So we need to probably standing idle. So we need to change his position into this. So let's create a new blend tree, and we're going to call this the combat blend tree, and let's make him blend straight into that after. We don't actually want him to go back, we want him to keep going to combat phase. And in the blend tree, let us create lots of motion fields, and under these motion fields we're going to change this to a 2D freeform Cartesian, input X and input Z, and now we'll load up our different standing idols. So we've got our standing idol, that one, we need to drag that to 0, 0. Well, we got to, where's our move forward? So we've got run back, so let's bring that in, make that negative 0.8. And now we'll need, where's the run forward? So that is 0.8. And I use 0.8 as it really does help. So let's make him walk left and right. I think that will make him seem intimidating. Where was it? Walk left and then walk right. Alright, so it's these two. So we've got walk left and walk right. So walk left is negative 0.8 and that is 0.8. Okay, so now if you kind of come into his character view and you press play, you'll see that he's in there. And if we blend left, blend forward, blend right, and blend back, he now has his combat stance. And now if you actually press play, he will go into his combat stance automatically because that's what we created in the transition. So he'll pull out his sword and then he'll stay in his combat stance. So that is perfect. Now what can we do to actually to make him begin his next combat phase, as we're going to call it? So we're going to maybe call this phase 1, which will be we can call this approach player and swing front. So, and then we can actually copy this phase 2 and see how it automatically renames it. So maybe let's make this here, here, and here. And instead of going straight to finish, we're actually going to create another one and then say choose random event. And this is where we can get really clever, and we can say let's go events and create 1, 2, or 3, and these will relate to the different phases. So let's go 1, 2, or 3 and hook these in to these different phases, right? So now we can put an event down and say random event. Actually, I think it's a different one I was thinking of. Is it event? Now what is it called? It's one of these. Send random event. So that's the one I want. I knew it was one of them. All right. And then we're gonna say either 1, 2, or 3, and we're actually gonna have to divide 3 by 3, which is about 0.333. So just roughly put that in, and then this will set the weights of them. Because if you have the first one as 1, it's instantly going to pick that as 1. So doing this, it will have an even chance of beginning phases. Or if you would prefer to have one be more chosen over the other, you could bring that weight up a little, and then that will choose that. So now when we press play, he will choose a random event, and then it will go to that phase. So if I bring this down and I press play, you'll notice after he pulls out his sword, he will choose a random event. So pulls that, and then he chose a phase 2. So if we come in here again, and theoretically he might choose a different one. Let's see, what does he choose this time? So he chose 2 again. So I mean, it's all much of a muchness. It probably has an even chance of choosing whatever. But let us start to set up different things. So we could say for phase 2, he could approach player from left, and maybe in phase 3 he approaches player from right. So that he's got like 3 different behaviors. So we could just put some simple stuff down. We could say float or set animator float, input Z, value 1, so he'll start running towards us. Let's copy this one and let's paste it in here. Instead of input Z, I'm going to make him run left, so let's set it to -1, and let's paste this guy in here, and we're going to set it to, well, this one's going to be 1 as well, and his input X, oh, that didn't work, input X, and then he will run to the right. And then we can maybe wait for a couple of seconds and then make him run forward. So if I jump out of here, let's see what behavior he chooses this time. So he's running towards us, he's going to pull out, and then he's moving to his right. So he's beginning attack phase 3. So, and then we'll have to maybe say wait a random amount and then run forward, and then continue doing whatever he's doing. But we need to actually also make him continue looking at the player, otherwise it will look a little bit weird when he's just staring someone off that's not there. So let's just paste each of these guys in, and let's say random, and we're also going to maybe say random, what do we got? Random float, that's the one we want. And we're going to store this as the time to wait. And this could be anywhere from, let's make him wait for 1 second to 5 seconds. 1, 2, maybe that might be a bit long, make it like 4. And time to wait. So this will generate a random time that we're going to make the player, the enemies wait for before engaging in their next action. So since this one's running forward and this one's running right and left, these ones will probably want to run forward again. So let's say finished. Once, or actually not finished, we're going to want to make them run forward. So as you can see, this is pretty much just setting up a rough blueprint of what you actually want your enemies to do in game. So let's make run forward, and these two will run forward. And you can pretty much even hook them into the same thing, as they're gonna be doing the same thing, and say run forward. Run forward. Perfect. And let's grab all of these. So this one, and just maybe those two. Don't need the random time for that one. And make that input Z is 1, and we're actually gonna copy and paste this in, and then you're gonna have to say input X is also is 0, because otherwise he'll continue running left and forward. Perfect. Now let's hook up our random times. So let's say wait, and the time he's gonna wait is the random time, and once he's done that, we're gonna run forward. Copy and paste this guy in here. Perfect. So now we are getting there. So let's have a look at what's happening now. So he's going to run towards us. So he's going to walk that way, right? And then he's decided to come and find us. So now what we'll probably want to do is we're going to have to he's stuck up there. We're probably going to have to figure out a way to make him stop running, even though, and then re-begin the whole animation system. So let's put a little clause in each one that will bring it back up to choosing a random event. So let's say if he runs forward, and then we're going to actually probably create another one, and this will be the combat the combat phase. Is that what we used up here? So we've got the attack phases, and then we're going to begin combat phase. So run forward, and then once this is at a certain distance, we can use this same one again, float, compare, and get distance. And run forward, and make sure you copy the get distance like we did last time into the previous ones, as that can start calculating when it transitions. Perfect. So once he moves into run forward and he gets the distance of the player, then he can actually transition into, so once he the distance to player is maybe 2 or less than 2, we will get him to go to the combat phase. Perfect. So let's bring that guy in here. So this will make them link into here, and let's make this guy red, so that way we know what that is. Let's make these 2 circuits so they're not linking weirdly. Perfect. Alright, and then that is good, and let's also make this like a yellow, because this is our the thing that we'll keep going back to. Perfect. So what were we up to then? So we've got this, so we're gonna have to say to combat phase once this the thing is less than 2. So let's see what our thing is, unless he chooses option 1. He did choose option 1, he's not going to stop moving, so let's do some work on option 1 as well. So begin phase 1, once we get the distance, and let's say we're going to have to pretty much do this one. Once this distance is less than 2, we're going to also make him go to combat phase, which we can hook in. Oh, we can hook that straight into the combat phase. So it's just keeping an eye on where all your things are at. So let's see what he chooses this time. Alright, so he's going to run towards us when he's less than 2. He probably stopped. Let's have a look. Let's just make sure that he was stopped. Perfect. So we're going to have to make this one at an instance, and we're going to have to make this float animator, and we're going to have to make input x0, copy and paste this, and we also have to make input z0 as well. So now we can focus on setting up a combo that he will actually do when he gets close to you. So he'll go there. Okay, he's gonna walk that way. He had like a small part, and then he is at a good attacking distance. So now let's say if we did move away, he would have to do this, but let's actually set up a first swing attack for him. So let's go into the animator. We're in combat. Alright, let's have a look for let's just find a generic thing that a bad guy would do. Alright, that kind of looks more like a good hit. So let's just say attack 1. So let's transition and then transition back into combat. And we're going to say bull attack 1. So if this one is true, if attack 1 is true, then we shall attack this guy, which I'll turn off has exit time. And once he completes the animation, let's make it blend back around there, he can go back into that. So that's perfect. So let's press come into here, and let's set up his first attack. Perfect. So let's come into combat phase, and we're actually going to say set animator bull, and animator bull for this guy shall be attack 1, and that shall be true. Let's wait for approximately 0.5 half a second, and once that's done we shall say finished. And once he's finished that, we can either say choose more combo or reset. So we shall see if that what will happen now, and we shall also come in here and just make that turned off so he won't continue swinging. So let's press play and see what happens. So he should do a complete loop now, so he should pull that out. He's going to go there, come in, and very good, he attacked us. So then he will pretty much be turned off. So now let's just say we come into movement. We could even do another choose random event. So let's bring this in. So let's say send random event. Let's make it 2 options this time just to make it easier. Let's make this either 1 or 2. And let's create 2 events. 1 or 2. And 2 is reset from start. Start event, which is basically this random one up here. So let's say finished and hook that back up into there. Perfect. And state 2, we shall say continue hitting, which will do the next phase. So event 2, let's make event 1 and event 2. Now let's make event 1 have a bit more preference, make it about 0.6. So that way he'll want to hit people more than restarting. So let's make continue hitting, and then once that's done, reset. So let's make him have two combos just initially. Let's come into here and let's set the 360 one to finish them off. So let's make that attack 2, and make transition from here bull and make that attack 2. Perfect. And make that attack 2 is true. Back. Very good. Make that in there. And we might have to actually link it from attack 1 to attack 2 depending on the timing. Alright, so let's come back to our enemy. Very good. And let's jump into the movement. And we're actually going to say from continue hitting, we can pretty much copy all this good stuff in here and paste that in here. And just make that attack 2 and make that wait until finished. And then we're basically going to have to sell this one for animator bull for attack 1, for attack 1 to be turned off, and also for attack 2 to be turned off. And then he should have a complete cycle set up. So let's see, we might have to change for the second attack bull a little bit. So there we go, he's going to come in. Very good. So you saw how I ran away, now he's engaging in following me. So we might have to do a little bit of work for that second one. We might have to actually make it also allow him to do it from the second one. Set at animator bull. Let's actually turn this guy off. And let's come in here, and we're actually going to say if this one is attack 1 is false and attack 2 is false, then go back. But if attack 1 is false but attack 2 is true, then continue that and then go back to here. And then to get into there, we need attack 1 to be true. Attack 1 is false, which is good, and then attack 2 has to be true. And for it to go back, both of them have to be false. Very good. That should work. Now we need to jump back to our enemy. Jump to the movement. And let's come down to here and copy this guy. So that has to be set to false. And this guy needs to possibly be true. So wait, let's just remove that and we'll set this guy to paste in here and he can be false in there. Alright, so let's see what's gonna happen now. Theoretically he should attack us. Alright, so here he goes. Bam. Bam. So he's gonna... Oh, he's going back. Let's have a look what's happening in here. Movement. Alright, so we're kind of cycling through everything. So in order for it to go back, let's have a look in here. Let's just make it not false. Okay, alright, so, well, that makes sense, that has to be false. And then in here, we're choosing that. That one's false, that one's true. Let's make that wait for like 1 second. That should do that. That doesn't have exit time. Because theoretically it should just be able to cross over whenever. So let's just that should do the trick. And then once that finishes, okay. Alright, let's see what's gonna happen now. It's just a lot of different bits and pieces to... Alright, so that obviously worked. Very good. So we might need to just make that blend a little bit longer, and let's also make the wait time on this guy a little bit longer. Let's make it like 0.9 to wait for him to finish. Alright, let's press play. Let's bring out our sword so we can see a bit better. And so we're just gonna have to do some more work for the actual transitions. We could even make that even longer. Let's bring that way back. And bring that out. And then let's blend him about. And that looks pretty good. So even when he's gonna blend, he should have definitely finished the blend. Bam. Slap. Alright, that's looking really nice. And then we'd have to probably set up the damage system for us. There we go, so he's gone. So it's kind of feeling more like a Bloodborne kind of movement right now, where we're actually attacking him and then he's doing the swipe back at us. But for today, I think that is a fairly good chunk of setting up a very basic an AI system that is very flexible. As you can see, we can pretty much hook in anything and continually have new loops going on and having him do different things. You could even make him run to a specific point by using the nav mesh agent, then turning it off and then having the enemy interact with something, and we might even look at that in the next tutorial. But something that's really nice about this is that if we say apply, save your scene, and then we can actually duplicate the enemy, and we can move this guy over here, and let's duplicate him again, and let's move this guy over here. You'll actually see that they should all theoretically do different things, and we can even probably adjust their different values. So these guys will probably all attack. You might have to engage different animations at different times. But if we synchronize them all, they would all want to be doing different things. So this guy actually moved around to the back of us and did that. So this will make the game quite challenging as well. And we might even need to put a system in for the enemies just to count how many times they've done it, and then to go and do a reset where they'll walk backwards, just to give the player a reprieve. Otherwise this will just feel like a massive mob of people throwing their swords at the person. But we'll have a look at that in the next tutorial. But I hope that you've enjoyed this quite in-depth look at creating AI for Unity Playmaker for our third-person character tutorial. My name's been Kieran Oversapian, and I'll see you guys in the next tutorial.